Hello. In this video, I want to take you through the newest Fabius Maximus patch in Humankind. Instead of going through the whole thing, I'm going to give you just a quick brief overview, and then I want to go through two things that I think Amplitude Studios, the developers of Humankind, got right and really nailed here. And then I want to give you two things, not that they got wrong, but I'm going to give you two things that I think they're still missing from this patch that need to help kind of balance the game out a little bit. What I've done is I've loaded up a game that is already finished. So this game is done and good to go. Already won this game. You can see 18.2k fame and kind of outpaced everyone. This was actually a multiplayer game that I played. So I'll be able to show you a couple different things because of that, because I'm allied with some of the people that I was playing with. And so we'll be able to take a look at their territory as well. So obviously with this patch, a ton of changes. Lots of bug fixes, which is really, really good. There was a lot of little bugs, things that were kind of affecting quality of life and quality of gameplay. And so that's a big deal. The bug fixes are great. And then lots of UI changes, little tweaks here and there to fix the UI, to give us more information, stuff like that. Those things are all great. However, the two things that I think were the most important changes they made, number one is culture balancing. So there were several cultures that definitely had some issues. The main one being the Turks. Okay, now I did not play the Turks. However, Icarus, who I was playing with, did play the Turks. And you'll notice that the patch has already taken place. So this video is recorded post-patch. So this public school right here has 100 science on it. Pre-patch, this public school had almost over 2,000 science on it. And this one was also approaching that level. That's insane, right? So what it turns out, right, is the district was not functioning as intended. It was supposed to have plus 5% district science output per adjacent research quarter. Instead, it was actually 300% instead of 5%. So that's huge, right? The other thing that was kind of causing trouble for balancing purposes was things like the Khmer Beret. Right, so here's some berets. This is a beret right here. It's a 52-42, so 52 production, 42 food beret. That's not bad. That's post-patch. Okay, pre-patch, I was running up over 100 production and I think something around 70-something food. I can't remember exactly the numbers, but the numbers were enormous. And that's because of the per population-based stuff, right? So several changes. The French right now, the science per population on that only occurs when the city is in science mode, right? And then a lot of the other per population bonuses have been removed or adjusted so that they don't quite function the same way that they used to, right? The Turks generates 1 science per food workplace instead of 1 science per population as well. So a lot of those per population bonuses are gone. The per population FIMs that the districts were having were definitely a little bit out of control. And so that culture balancing piece is, I think, the first part that they nailed. I'm sure it still needs some tweaking to bring everyone back in line, but eliminating just that per population based feature on the emblematic quarters was definitely a big win to help balance the game out. The second thing that I think they really nailed is Neolithic era balancing. So one of the big things that had happened was there was no incentive, or it wasn't incentivized well enough to move out of the Neolithic era. So we can take a look in this particular game. This was my capital city. I had, if you look at this, I had this was down, this was down, this was down, and I think this one over here was down. I had 4 outposts down before I even left the Neolithic era. So let me show you what that looked like. Here's my Neolithic era. Here's my growth stars. I had a population of 28 before I left the Neolithic era, to go along with 11 out of 5 hunter stars and 28 out of 10 knowledge stars. That is a little bit ridiculous, right? So what I was able to do in my game, because I had 28 units to start, we started up here. This is where another player started. This was another player's capital, right? They chose the Harapins. They even had runners to be able to compete with mine, right? With my scouts. They didn't stand a chance because I was just able to surround them with different things, kill all of their units, trap them in their city, and literally just starve them out and take over their city. So that that was definitely needed. A needed balance, right? So now there's reduction for animal lair food from 20 down to 5. Mammoth combat strength has been increased, so you can't just beat mammoths up all over the place. And then they've also added a upkeep cost of 1 gold to units that you come into the next era with. So when you have 28, all of a sudden it's gonna be costing you 28 gold in the next era, and that's going to set you back economically. So now they've incentivized moving out of the Neolithic era a little bit earlier, rather than staying as long as I did, which I think was somewhere around 27 turns that I stayed in the Neolithic era in this game, and ended up with that pretty ridiculous amount of population that I was just able to turn into armies that kind of just crushed everybody. So those are the two things that I think are most affected the game, in my opinion, from this patch, that in a positive sense. So I really think that they nailed those things. Kudos to them for addressing both the culture balancing as well as that Neolithic era balance as well. So here's two things that I think, again, not that they missed, but that aren't in this patch, right? It wasn't a mistake in the patch itself. The first of those things that I think is pretty critically important to have addressed is this city right here, Kahuachi, and also this city right here, Sus, were basically free cities for me. And what I mean with that is the free peoples founded these cities, and then their units left. So this, I believe, was a peaceful free peoples, and then this one up here was an aggressive free peoples. So you can do this with either of them, and you can still do this even post-patch. So the problem is, one scout can go into a city like Sus, the free peoples will put it down, their units will leave the city, and you can literally just take it with one scout. So you get a free city on a scout that's just roaming around. I think that's kind of breaking the mechanism of city cap. Like, you're getting cities too quickly, and it's way too easy to take a city over that way. My personal suggestion would be every city that the free people start should just start with one population. That would automatically give them a population to defend their city, so you would actually have to attack into it. At least there would be a battle for the city, rather than you just walk in and the city's yours, and then they don't even attack you back most of the time. Especially the peaceful free peoples, right? So I think that needs to be addressed in a future patch. And again, my suggestion would be just put one population in those cities as soon as they're founded. Then at least there's some defense there that you have to go through. So you can't just take it with a single scout, right? It's got to probably be something more than that to be able to get access to that city. So that's the first thing that I think needs to be addressed in a future patch. The second thing is, I don't think there's enough incentive to move up through the ages quickly. In this game, I spent a grand total of, I think, 4 turns in the final era. In the contemporary era, I only spent 4 turns in this era. Meanwhile, one of my opponents, Kid Icarus, was in this era for a long, long time, and in fact ended the game on tech victory. But there's not really a great incentive. If you want the most fame, you kind of want to just sit in different eras, right? So I'll give you an example. In the second era, I sat here until I had 17 of 21 stars. You can see I've gotten gold stars on 5 of the different things, and I didn't even grab the final expansionist one, right? So the incentive to move up, if you want the most fame, just isn't there for me. And so my personal preference for playing the game and gaining the most fame is just to sit in each era almost as long as possible, right? You want to try to get as many of these 3 stars as possible, because that's going to get you the most fame. And so you're kind of sitting for quite some time and not moving up. Unless you have a specific combo you're going for that's really going to crush late game, you really can just take your pick of whatever the remaining civilizations are to be able to move up. And I think there's not enough incentive currently to move through, right? Again, I'm waiting till 15 of 32 stars, 15 here, 18 here in this era I waited for. And then I only got 4 in the final era, and my fame score is still just astronomically higher than everybody else's because I was sitting in each era for so long. I'm not exactly sure how they should address this, but I do think it should be addressed. One suggestion I might have is, currently, when you move up, And when someone earns a star, right, then the next star is worth a little bit less fame of that particular type, right? Maybe increasing that gap would help with this problem, because then the more people that are above you in era, the less and less you're going to be able to have access to that fame, so your stars are worth less when you do finally move up and start earning them. That might be one way to address it. I don't think that that penalty is high enough yet to incentivize me to move up quickly. And so I might be wrong. Maybe perhaps with the changes they've made, there'll be more incentive to move up just because there's a lot of things that have changed and optimized the game and balanced it out a little bit. But I think that that's something they could address in the future, is incentivizing me to move up more than just getting first choice of culture, right? I think first choice of culture is great, but if the point of the game is to gather as most fame as possible, then really I'm just going to sit for quite some time in each era until I collect all the stars, right? 18 of 21, I'm getting a lot of fame out of that. And so it's very difficult to compete with that, even if you're moving up quickly. So those are the two things that I think that Amplitude really nailed with the Fabius Maximus patch. Obviously, the culture balancing was a really big deal. And then the Neolithic age era balancing, I think, was good. So I think they've incentivized that era. The two things that I think still need to be addressed: being able to take free people's cities absolutely free. I think that that needs to be addressed and taken care of in a future patch. And then also incentivize me in some way more than what is already there to move out of the era I'm in and into the next one. I'm still sitting in each era for quite some time, and so I'd like to have more. I'd like players to be more rewarded who are trying to move up and progress quickly through the eras, because right now I don't feel like that's necessarily happening. Those are my two things that they got right, and then my two things that I think are still missing. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please feel free to comment what you thought about the big patch. I'm pretty excited. I think it makes the game a lot more balanced and a lot better. Thank you all for listening, and I'll see you for the next video.